Hello and welcome to the Limo Profit Show. I'm your host, Ed Stapleton Jr., and we've got a great show for you tonight. If you have ever thought about selling your limo company, if you're sick and you just want to get out of this business, or if you're thinking longer term and you want to have a nice nest egg for yourself when you want to retire, I've got a great presentation for you today. I've got Steve Minucci on the line. Steve is the Managing Director of the Tenney Group. Steve, say hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I guess. Hope everyone's well.
Great. So today we've got a really interesting presentation called the 9.5 Points You Need to Know to Increase the Value of Your Transportation Business. So without further ado, let's hand over the reins to Steve, and I hope you guys enjoy the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Ed. It's excellent to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. Love just to start, as anybody would in a presentation like this, is that if you have a business, there's a couple goals, either to have a business that you're going to keep for a long time or something that you're thinking about selling. But at some point, you're going to get out of this business. And I guess if you look at a business, just for example, you had $1.5 million in sales and you had two buyers. And one of those buyers was willing to pay you $250,000 more for that business than the other. Would you like to know how to attract the richer buyer? And I think if I could see my audience here, if you'd be raising your hand saying yes.
Yeah, my hand's in the air.
Yes, great. And so what we want to do is just give you some real concrete tools. They're very simple, but yet we see in a lot of businesses people aren't doing these things. And so it just helps us as we look at businesses and make them easier to sell and obviously at higher multiples. We're going to share some of that wisdom here with you today. So let's see. First of all, the number one item we have here is the idea of having strong financial records. And it is amazing how many businesses do not have this. And just very simply, the highlight of all this is make sure that you have really good records, because it makes a significant interest in the value of your business. Recently, we had a business where we did a walkthrough, and the buyer looked at the ceiling. And of course, now this is a business with very poor records, just setting the context there for you. So buyer looks up at the ceiling, sees some problems that had been at the roof, and asks the question of the seller, what is going on here? Oh, we had that fixed a month or two ago, not a big issue. Well, given the fact that the records were poor, most sellers, if it was good, would just say, okay, let's move on. But in this case, because of the poor records, the buyer said, hey, I want to see when that was fixed, who fixed it, and let's go up and take a look at the roof to make sure. So the bottom line is that everything becomes a negotiation when you have poor financial records. The cost to have, there are many limo accountants, CPAs around the country. You don't even have to be near you. They can all just log into your QuickBooks and do it, so you don't have to be in the same city. They do it very efficiently, and certainly I could help with connecting you with people who do that, and that would be a great way to, number one, increase the value of your business. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is sell at the top. Ironically, we're just talking to someone today, and sales are just through the roof. They're going fantastic. They're doing very well. And the idea is that, well, gee, they're going to kind of slow down in November. And I said, well, most buyers like to know your business is doing well. Would you rather sell and get that excitement from the buyer now, or wait until November when sales are down, and then you're obviously at the mercy of that buyer maybe changing their mind? So if you're doing well right now with your business, that is the time to think about selling and look at it anyway. And maybe in a couple of years you get back into it. But certainly, how much higher can your sales go? I had another seller recently tell me that, Steve, I don't see a point where my sales can get any higher than they are right now. Based on all the businesses that he had in the area, based on the large corporate clients that he had, he said, I don't see it happening. And based on that point, the only thing that can go wrong is something bad, and losing a client or health issues or whichever. So if you're kind of in that mode of thinking about selling and you're at the top, that would be a good time to look at it. Number three on our list, Ed, is what multiple do buyers use? And this is where do a little bit of education. Really, there's two types of buyers for transportation businesses and limo businesses. You have your financial buyer, who is someone who just wants to buy the business based on the cash flow. So he is a smaller operator, just wants to own a limo business And really, in these cases of a financial buyer, the bank is the one who really sets the price of your business, not you, somewhat the marketplace, but really it's the bank, because the bank is going to tell this potential buyer what he can afford to borrow to buy your business based on the cash flow. So if you're not showing any cash flow in your records, you have a very difficult time selling your business to a financial buyer. So that's key. From the Tenney Group's perspective, 90% of the deals that we do are with strategic buyers. And strategic buyers, they care about things like your management team, your mechanics, your location, reputation, how you're involved in the community. They, of course, really care about your top-line revenues. And they care more about top-line revenues than they do about your bottom-line profits. And that's because they know how to run a business, a limo business. So if you have fleet pricing, or you have insurance, or you have any of the other driving costs, they know how to run a business, so they're going to substitute their numbers into your expenses for that. So they know. So if they're looking at picking up $1 million, $2, $3 million of a revenue stream, they're not as important, not as keyed in on what your bottom line profit is, only because of the fact that you have that top line revenue. So that's something to think about. If you're looking at getting out in a couple years and maybe your margins are not as great as you'd like them to be, find a way. Make an acquisition, do something yourself to pump up the revenues such that then you're going to be more attractive to a large strategic buyer. Because if you're smaller on the revenue side, it's going to be hard to attract a strategic buyer. So you want to get your revenues up to probably a couple $1 million range.
In terms of strategic buyers, what is attractive to a strategic buyer?
Attractive is repeat business. That is probably number one item from a strategic buyer, because you can sit there and tell them about all these people that call you or use your website or come on and come back to you, but they really want to know about repeat business. And a lot of them will say they'll only pay for the repeat business. They won't pay for the other side. And obviously, we work with them and coach them to find a way around that in a lot of cases. But it's very serious working on making sure that you have a high percentage of repeat customers.
Gotcha. And what kind of multiple are you seeing being applied in a strategic buyout situation?
Well, on the strategic side, it really is the basis of those other items, looking at the management team, the mechanics, the location, reputation, that percentage of strategic buyers. So it's going to be the value of the equipment plus some percentage of revenue, and that really depends. And that's kind of why you bring in someone like the Tenney Group, or someone who does what we do to kind of assess that and get a sense of what that number may be. On the financial buyers, of course, you're looking at anywhere from the 2 to 3 probably times your typical of any other, whether it's a restaurant or a pizza parlor or a manufacturing business, a sign shop. It's going to be all the same, literally multiples that you would find in those sort of business, because it's just based, again, back on what the bank will pay. Moving along here, number 4, extract yourself from the business. And I do a PowerPoint with this that I presented to a number of associations, and my slide here has a picture of a man with 18 hats on his head, and he is doing it all. He's doing the accounting, he's cleaning cars, he's driving once in a while, he's taking reservations, he's doing everything. Those businesses will not last very long, at least from a just longevity perspective. They're just not positioned to sell very well. And the idea here is to build a strong team, have people around you so that you can take a vacation. I had a buyer once come up to me, a seller, and say, I haven't taken a vacation in 42 years. And I said, I'm sorry for you and for your family and all that. The bad news is that that's not going to help you sell your business, because no one wants to buy a business knowing that the previous owner never took a day off for 42 years. Right. So having that, building a team, finding a way. We had a business once where they were operating on all 8 cylinders, just fantastic, doing very, very well. Well, come to find out is the owner of the business was handicapped, could not drive a car. All he did was manage the business and build a team to do all those things, the cleaning and the occasional driving and the going out to see customers. But he was very, very successful, very high margins, because he was watching the numbers in the business, not making sure that the wheels were clean or the cars were vacuumed. So build a team.
Right.
Number 5, seller financing. Now, this is one, again, I have a slide with a bunch of arrows pointing at me because, and a lot of times, the potential sellers of a business say, Steve, I just want to sell my business, I want to get the check, and I want to ride off into the sunset. And I say to them, unfortunately, don't shoot the messenger, because that is not where the market is at. The market is at having seller financing. And so holding a note, whatever you want to call it, it's just necessary in order for the transaction to go through. And a lot of that is, one is because of the banks. If the buyer is looking to get a loan to help him through this, whether it's SB or otherwise, the banks take very kindly to knowing and seeing that the seller is willing to have a little bit of skin in the game. If the seller is just going to leave and be gone and done with it, a lot of people, including the buyer, and of course the bankers, are less willing to get involved in situations like that because they don't know that the business is going to continue, continue once the owner leaves the business. So seller financing is really key. What it really does is it attracts more buyers, which is good because obviously you want to attract more buyers, and more buyers means more competition for your business, which again is going to mean better pricing from your perspective. You're going to get a better price if you have more buyers involved. It's going to attract the banks, as I said, and it's just going to make get money in your pocket sooner because you're going to sell your business faster. And lastly, you're going to give a lot less money to Uncle Sam, because if you can take that money and take some of it now, but then the rest of it over the next, let's call it 2 to 5 years, you're going to be in a much better tax perspective than if you hit all that income at one tax year. So that's one issue. Seller financing, just know that it's out there and it's going to help you to get more money for your business and to sell it faster.
Got it.
Number 6, Ed, is confidentiality. And I had an operator come up to me recently. He said, do you know what the problem in our business is? He says, we talk too much. And the minute you start talking about it, it's kind of like the sick chicken. You know what happens to a sick chicken is the other ones start pecking at it. And then pretty soon that sick chicken is not around anymore. And you want to put yourself in a position to not let your customers know, not let your competition know, and of course your employees. If you've built a good team and you've got a great operator, you've got some good drivers and such, and they hear that your business is for sale, they're thinking, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I better start looking. And pretty soon you've decimated your team. You have given your competitors an advantage because they'll start talking about it on the street. So the bottom line is talk about it to as very limited number of people as possible. Don't talk about this with a lot of folks. And it's much, much different than selling a house, because obviously with a house, you can serve cake and punch and cookies, and you can have a big sign out front, and you can have all of your books laid out on the table, and have people come in and look at it. With a business, you can't do that. And so confidentiality is very, very important. Okay, number 7, be realistic about the growth goals of your business. And this is something where people say, well, I want to sell in a year or 2, but first let me buy some more equipment. What we typically see in the deals that we do is that if you're buying new equipment, you really won't see a return on that investment unless you're planning on keeping the business for longer than 2 years. It just with depreciation, and that's really the big one, is that it's very, very difficult to get that money back in your business. So if you have the idea that you want to do it in the next couple of years, maybe now is better than later, because adding that extra investment just usually, in 9 times out of 10 that we've seen in the businesses that we've sold, and we are involved in all types of business sales, whether it's fire sales or well-planned exit strategies. But on the ones where they bought equipment, they typically don't see a return on that investment if it's less than 2 years. This is one that it always floors me, is number 8, force strategic buyers to compete for your business. And you know, Ed, that when you go to sell a house, back in the heyday market, you heard about folks where their homes were so coveted that they would say to potential buyers, put your bid in my mailbox by 5 p.m. on Friday, And if you get a call Monday morning, then it's yours. If not, you're out of the bidding. The only way that happens is with competition. And it also works the same way. Think about as a limousine operator, transportation business owner. You have lived and mostly died by competition. How come you have not been able to raise your prices up to $1,000 for a trip to the airport, Ed? What would be the number one reason? Competition.
Competition, yeah.
Exactly. So we find owners getting to the end of their business. They've been up against competition their whole life. It's kept their pricing in check. They've had to be very careful about how they price their business, their runs, and they go to sell their business and they say, oh, I've got a guy over here that said he'll buy it from me. One person. So no competition, no ability to have people in the marketplace bidding against the business, just a single buyer. You don't want to get stuck with a single buyer because he becomes a person who's in control of the process, not you. And he forces you to play by his rules as opposed to you telling him, hey, I'm in charge here. I'm calling the shots because I have multiple people competing for my business. So don't throw competition out the window when you go to sell your business. It always amazes me that people would have died through the competition their whole careers and then go to the end when they can finally have competition in their favor, and then they decide to sell out to a single buyer. So
let me ask you a question about that.
Yes.
There's got to be a fine line between forcing a strategic bidding process versus the need for confidentiality in this process, like you talked about earlier. How do you walk that fine line in terms of not giving out too much information to the market, but at the same time being able to build up a bit of a frenzy for your business?
That's a great question. And really, as people who only work in the area of transportation businesses, we've been selling a few hundred of these businesses. We've been down this road a few times and do have some experience. So the basic answer I would give to you is that what we do is, first of all, we're qualifying potential buyers. So we're qualifying them in a couple ways. Financially, so do they really have the money to do the transaction? And so right away when you go out with we start with a very generic explanation. So we would say, limo business, Westchester County, some corporate clients, has X amount of sales, and owner wants to retire. I mean, that could be any one of probably 50 businesses in Westchester County, let's say, for example. And so once we start engaging potential buyers into it, and we see that, this is a fit for their business. There's some things that may work together with it. Then what we do is they provide a non-disclosure agreement that they sign both personally and corporately to guarantee that. And then we ask them for a way to show that they are not tire kickers, that they truly have the money to buy this business. And so whether that's a bank statement, a letter from their bank, their account from their savings account or their mutual funds, or whatever it is, something that says that this person really could pull the trigger based on the sale price of this business. And we tell them what the number needs to be. You need to have $100,000 in cash. You need to have $500,000 in cash, whatever the number is. And of course, if you're any of the very, very large companies, if you're Harrison Global or you're Avalon, obviously, Carrie, you're not having to get information like that from them because, they have the money. But for the people that, we don't work with, we don't know, we get that step. So once we get those pieces of information, then we're very confident that these people are very credible and can walk through the process. And then it becomes the competition. You engage as many potential as you can who fit the profile, and then you start working the process. And so we've been able to maintain confidentiality. We find 95% of the time that the talkers are the sellers. Maybe they're saying something, they're at the local diner, and someone behind them overhears them, or they're in the office, they leave a piece of paper on their desk, or potentially the computer screen is up with maybe an offer or something. That's where we find that the breach of confidentiality usually happens, and it's not through the buyers, because the buyers are going out on a limb. They're signing an agreement, and they are pledging to us both that and financially that they are in this seriously. So good question. Okay, moving right along, number 9. Educate yourself, and there are tons of resources out there. Certainly we have a website that has information, lots of newsletters we provide. There's plenty of information in many different places, not only in ours, but many other folks have information on first selling a business in general. There's fewer that just work in the area of transportation and specifically limousine businesses, but there is information out there. So, commit yourself. Put it in your calendar as a repeating event. Every Thursday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to spend 30 minutes just researching about other businesses that are for sale, seeing what is going, what are the issues of some of these 9 points we've talked about today. How am I doing on these 9 points? Am I building a team? Am I thinking about potential buyers for my business right now? What are the things that I'm doing to make sure that my business, when I do want to sell, is going to be there? So the more educated you are, the better off you are, and we certainly find we get the highest price for businesses we sell are sellers that are educated, that have an exit strategy, as opposed to, oh no, I have to sell the business. The number one mantra when I talk to folks is, make sure you sell before you have to sell. And that is a key point that we really try to get in people's minds early so that they're not at the point where they have a gun to their head. And obviously at that point, the sharks smell the blood in the water, and you're kind of at the mercy of them, as opposed to being in a position of strength where you want to be. And number 9.5 on the list here is to engage trusted advisors. And that can be accountants, that can be friends, people that will hold you accountable. We have many times people that we want to be involved in our businesses, and we want to share with them our plans for it. And when we have big decisions we need to make about our business, whether it's buying equipment, whether it's taking on a new client, whether it's hiring a certain person, we want to go back to those people and involve them in that decision. And if they say, gee, Ed, this is not consistent with what you told me 6 months ago about the future of your business, what has changed? And I liken it in my presentation to a designated driver. They have the keys, and you're kind of giving them the keys and saying, hey, I want to be accountable to you in this process, and I want to make sure that we're both on the same page as far as this business goes. And any decisions that I make, I want you to be able to call me on it. And if I'm doing something inconsistent with what I said before, I better have a good reason to do it. So it's having those advisors. Who are your top 3 trusted advisors? And really think about it. Write those people down and call them and tell them, hey, I think in 3 to 5 years I want to sell my business. Here's where my revenue's at today. Here's where I want it to be. Here's my plan to get there. And involve them in the process. And people that you trust, people that you're able to confide in, and then that will help you to make a best decision. So, kind of my wrap up here is, selling a business is one of the most important financial decisions of your life. And so, you want that toil you put in, those hopefully not 42 years without a vacation, but all those years you put in, you want to have the best reward possible. And in the words of kind of combining statements here from Stephen Covey and Jeffrey Gitomer, Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. Jeffrey Gitomer, who's a sales kind of guru man, he kind of changed that to say begin with the outcome in mind. So what is the outcome? Is it selling your business for X amount of dollars? Really know what that number is so that you can plan for it better than just thinking at the end that someday I want to sell my business. You really want to have an outcome in mind.
I like it. Let me ask you a question. Say I'm a small operator, let's say under 5 cars. Mm-hmm. Would you say, what is the number one thing, the most important part of it? Would you say it's maintaining good financial records?
I would say that in cases like that, since there are buyers of businesses at every level, I would say it's a tie between good records and making sure that you're not wearing all the hats. Because even at 5 cars, you still need someone that is managing the business. So, I would say it's a close 1 and 2 between those two, but certainly keeping good records. And the cost to have the records done, you will reap that so many times over by having a good accountant use QuickBooks or a bookkeeper even, just to do those during the year, and then having your accountant at the end of the year to do those. But, I working with a business right now where it's an older business, and they do their records once a year. So month to month, they'd have no idea where they're at financially. They just do everything the end of the year, give it to their accountant, and then by April 15th, then they know how they did in their business for the year. And of course, no one can really run a business like that. That just is not very effective, because you need to make changes throughout the year to your business. And so I would recommend, again, having those records done by someone who can, and again, it's not expensive, and you will more than pay for itself when you sell your business, because that business will be valued much more highly if you're showing 3 years of records where you watched your expenses, you knew what was happening month to month, quarter to quarter, and were able to really make changes midstream in your business.
Got it. Good to know. Okay. Steve, if an operator wanted to get a hold of you, how would they contact you?
Well, a couple ways. First of all, the Tenney website is thetenneygroup.com, and Tenney is with a T as in Thomas, thetenneygroup.com. My office number is area code 615-678-0357, 615-678-0357. You can also connect with me through the website also, but just to take a look there, see some information about what we do and who we do it, many, many testimonials from our customers and past clients, and they will help convince you if you're considering, even just thinking down the road, this is something that you want to do. Or the other area that we do a lot of work in is in valuations for transportation businesses. So someone just really wants to get a sense of where they're at, whether they're doing succession planning, or they just want to know exactly, if I want to get to $5 million sale price in some year, I need to know where I'm at today so that I know steps I need to take in order to get to that $5 million price in the future. But the only way to do that is to really do a valuation. So that's a very valuable tool that we do for a lot of transportation business owners.
Great. That's good to know. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Steve. This has been great.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.